Hi everyone, I'm Gareth McGraw, part of the Aviation Psychology and Human Factors team. And in this session, we'll explore the cause and effects of fatigue and strategies to support you at home and when applying. As we've touched on, one of the specific hazards that we monitor is fatigue impairment. The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, defines fatigue as a physiological state of reduced mental or physical performance capability resulting from sleep loss or extended wakefulness, circadian phase or workload. Many times people think that fatigue is a risk in of itself. In fact, fatigue is a normal part of life, and throughout our day we will all gradually accrue fatigue the longer we are awake. So to some extent, fatigue will always be present and can therefore affect anyone if not properly managed, particularly in our role as cabin crew, where we work as shift workers across multiple time zones. So we focus on fatigue prevention and fatigue management, but more accurately, we should say that we focus on excessive fatigue prevention and management. Because if we do not prevent and manage excessive fatigue, this could lead to the risk of us injuring ourselves, incorrectly applying SOPs or emergency procedures, or having a negative interaction with our colleagues or customers. So remember, fatigue itself is not the risk, but if we do not prevent and manage it, it could lead to safety risks. We aim to prevent and manage excessive fatigue so that it doesn't lead to us injuring ourselves, incorrectly applying SOPs or emergency procedures, or having negative interactions with customers. The risks. How can we depict this? One way is to use a bow tie diagram. The slide shows an example of a fatigue bow tie. A bow tie is an excellent way to show a risk and all of the controls that we are employing to prevent it. In the case of risks from fatigue, it shows how we are trying to prevent an excessive fatigue event from occurring and what controls those actions or procedures we have to recover if excessive fatigue does occur. In other words, what controls are in place to prevent the consequences, the risks of excessive fatigue. The bow tie works by first identifying what has the potential to cause excessive fatigue. Those are our threats in our operating environment. On the left-hand side of the diagram, we can see examples such as interrupted sleep, extended shifts, or even network disruptions. Between those threats and someone actually becoming excessively fatigued, the bow tie details are preventative controls that are intended to stop that occurring. This can include our rostering guidelines, in-flight rest, minimum time between duty, and guidance on good sleep hygiene. In the center, the bow tie defines what the hazard, excessive fatigue, looks like when it has been released. We have failed to prevent the hazard occurring. On the right-hand side, the bow tie then seeks to list all of the reasonably expected potential negative consequences, our risks. Here we can see crew responding incorrectly to an emergency event, having a slip and injuring themselves, or simply having a negative interaction with a customer or colleague. But again, the bow tie then also shows the multiple recovery controls which seek to prevent an instance of someone being excessively fatigued actually resulting in one of those potential consequences. These include additional in-flight rest, adjusting a crew member's duties, or even withdrawing from duty due to fatigue. So to summarize, the bow tie maps out all of those preventative and recovery controls that seek to effectively manage fatigue so that it does not result in a negative consequence. We see the threats that may lead to us operating with a reduced level of alertness due to fatigue, with controls in between that seek to stop that occurring. We can see that even with our controls, as we are all human, and we are involved in aircraft operations which include shift work and multiple time zones, there is still the potential for us to become excessively fatigued to the point that it affects our performance. But again, that itself isn't the risk. The risk is actually when we are unable to prevent that decreased performance, leading to one of the listed negative consequences. Around the world, there have been significant developments in fatigue science in recent years. in particular in the area of fatigue science for airline operations. Because of this, we've commenced work to enhance the way we manage fatigue for cabin crew by introducing an enhanced fatigue risk management program, an FRMP. We've based our FRMP on world-leading scientific knowledge and advice. It aligns to guidance from experts at ICAO, IATA, and CASA. Importantly, the changes we are making will align the cabin crew FRMP to the pilot FRMS model, which has been endorsed by the regulator CASA. However, noting that it is tailored for the nature and role of a cabin crew team member, your service times, your breaks, and your patterns. To give you an idea on what is involved in the fatigue risk management program at a high level, I'll explain some of the features. It includes the introduction of a biomath model. This scientific model integrates with our rostering system to review every single crew member's roster, both prior to travel and post-travel, to identify individual trips which may carry a risk of being fatiguing, and also to review the roster in totality to identify if there is any risk of cumulative fatigue. This means every single roster will be reviewed for fatigue every single bid period. It includes the introduction of enhanced training. We'll be taking you all through training which will enhance your knowledge in individual fatigue prevention strategies. The training will provide advice from aviation fatigue scientists covering how to prevent fatigue as a Qantas cabin crew member, and cover how to prevent fatigue when undertaking trips that might include things like back-of-clock flying, early starts, operating across multiple time zones, and it will include developing strategies for rest over a trip or a roster. It will include fatigue studies. We'll be investing in fatigue studies on an ongoing basis. For short haul, our first study reviewed the Perth-based rosters, which included back-of-clock flying with early starts. It includes enhanced communication. We'll be talking to you each bid period about how to prevent fatigue, how to identify and report fatigue if it does happen, and the outcomes and actions resulting from our studies. It includes a renewed CFIT, a continuation of our cabin crew fatigue identification panel, to review and monitor fatigue. This panel includes representatives from Qantas, cabin crew members, HSRs, and union representatives. These are the most comprehensive improvements and the single biggest investment we've ever made in fatigue risk management for our cabin crew. We're really proud to be leading the way for cabin crew in this space. Our fatigue risk management program framework is an important part of how Qantas and ourselves as individuals manage risk. The FRMP uses a variety of methods to identify and address fatigue-related risks, as shown here. It uses predictive measures which attempt to anticipate when fatigue impairment may occur in the future. An example may be a new route or a changed slip length. Did you know that a longer slip is not always better? This is because our fatigue levels can continue to increase when we spend longer periods in a time zone that is not the same as our body clock time. The FRMP also includes proactive measures. These attempt to control or reduce the likelihood of fatigue impairment in current operations. It includes measures that are driven by knowledge and current experience. And finally, it utilises reactive measures, which are triggered by actual events and reacting to a situation. An example may be a fatiguing trend identified for lax departures, with an underlying issue of disturbed hotel sleep found to be the cause. So, let's next delve into the fatigue risk management and our responsibilities.